Hi all, welcome to our latest edition of the post. Apologies for the lack of this last few weeks. We get it done and then something crops up and then either we've had a little hiccup with footage or whatever. But we're back and running, so hopefully plenty to kind of delve our teeth into. Not missed too much. At the same time, we've had a couple of trips as well, so apologies for that. Obviously, the main focus of late in football is a lot of midweek stuff. Pretty much, if you've kept your eye on football in general just now, the cycle has been weekend game, midweek, and it might either be a European game, could be domestic league, could be a cup, and that's kind of been the theme pretty much the last month, or like pretty much since the start of the season anyways, because obviously we've had the six games for the group stage now all done, for Champions League, Europa League and Conference League, and then we've also had like an international break thrown in with like the Nations League, and we've had like the League Cup. Obviously we're a couple of rounds into that now, and just everything kind of just thick and fast really. So you're mainly trying to keep up with everything, and that's like half the challenge. But at the same time, obviously the leagues are trying to get as many games played before the World Cup, so that way when it comes post World Cup, it's they're all kind of they're all kind of caught up really. Yes, the players are going to be absolutely knackered, as seen a lot kind of the last few weeks, and I still get the feeling it's going to happen between now and pretty much like the last games anyway, that teams are going to still have a heck of a lot of injuries, and that is going to cause a lot of problems for nations, because obviously like the list of injured players just keeps going longer, which is, it's just kind of scary when you kind of look at it for like the World Cup really. Like Mane being the most recent one, like last night he went off after like 20 minutes, and like the list just grows, like Pogba, Reece James, possibly Martin Boyle from like Australia. Like if you want like the ones that are like guaranteed as it were that are out is Pogba, Kante, Werner, Jota, Gini Wijnaldum, Salamaker, Diego Carlos, Arthur, Chilwell, Reece James, Corona, or Tecatito. Then the ones that obviously like at the moment seem to be confirmed is like Mane, Dybala could get in the squad, but he has to play the game for like Torino or something at like the weekend. So it's like, if you can play that or something, then you're in the squad. If you can't, then obviously your place will go to somebody else. Lo Celso, Lukaku, as far as we believe, Mainan and Varane are missing it. Florian Wirtz, Sulemana for Ghana, Azamoun for Iran. That's a big like goal outlet right out the equation for Iran, which is a big deal. Jimenez for Mexico, same problem. Vlahovic for Serbia, if he misses, that's a key miss. Heung-min Son, obviously for South Korea, that's like your star man. Can't afford to not have him. Jan Sommer, a big reason why, if they can keep clean sheets for Switzerland, he'll be a big part of it. Araujo for Uruguay apparently is at the moment looks like set to miss. Joe Allen as well. Like the list just keeps going on and on and on and on. Like you just say to yourself, like every nation has problems. It's kind of worrying really. Like I think when you broke it down, it's like every nation has at least 5 players at least injured for their squad, and you think to yourself, like, what is going on? Like, what this it goes back to the point of, this is why the World Cup should have been over the summer, because then everyone had enough time to recover. People are playing games, yes, they're match fit going into the World Cup, but the problem is that they're all picking up injuries as like time goes. So it's like you can't afford like the World Cup's supposed to be like the best players from every country attending, and you say to yourself, like, what is going on? You just kind of scratch your head really, because like Canada's going to potentially be missing like two of their big players, mainly their goalie, potentially Alphonso Davies and Scott Kennedy, like Brozovic and Vida for Croatia, obviously Keylor Navas for Costa Rica, Christensen for Denmark. It's just like every team is like France is the biggest dent of the lot. Like out of all the nations, when you look at the squad, they're missing basically potentially the number one, but obviously Lloris is both Lloris and Mainan are class. No Lucas Hernandez, no N'Golo Kante, no Pogba, no Varane, no Lucas Digne potentially, no Koundé potentially, but it all comes down to if they're fit enough to actually play. That like there's knocks, they still obviously if they've got a knock, it's still a factor as well. Royce, like it'd be brutal for him to miss another international competition. Like the guy has no luck. To think that he could have been a World Cup champion with Germany still, and he's not had that opportunity, it's kind of actually brutal. But I'm just like, you see yourself, this is what happens when you give it to a country that's basically like an oven, and players have to play basically 20 games and I mean like 20 games when you kind of break it down, especially when you've got to factor in they've had to play, they're going to be playing basically say 15 league games at least, depending on which league you're playing in. You've then got to factor in they've had maybe half a dozen European games, depending on what nation. So most players generally will have already had 20 games in their system. They've then got this however many games they've had maybe for cups, so you've maybe got 3 or 4, depending on which league you're in as well. You might have even had other cups on top, so you might have had other, like if you're like say a young player that's maybe in one of the star nations, so you could have been in something else, so you might have had like reserve stuff as well, or under 19 stuff that maybe right at say start of the season, on top of like maybe getting a league game as well thrown in, so your body literally cannot sustain it. And it goes back to the argument where like players over like COVID were basically playing like twice a week. I think there was even the odd ones where they were 3, just to play catch up. What the problem is, and like people just, they're accepting it, I think, when they shouldn't, and this is when the argument should be said by every nation and like every like just the players, like just say like this is when you like you should have a union as it were, and you basically say right, well let's go through. You say right, there's 32 nations in the World Cup. You say to yourself, right, well how many players are in essence missing? You would say right, well every nation on average is, we'll say, missing 4 players. So that's 120 players missing right off the bat, and you would actually say to yourself, how many players are actually like a starter? So you'd say how many are starters. So you might say, well 50% are starters. You might say there's players within are, they might not start, but they're at least going to get a substitute appearance for that nation. So you might say, well that's another like say 30%, and then the other 20% are just players that have been picked, for example, or 40% and 10%. So you've maybe got 130 injuries all told. But like the one thing to kind of note, like throughout all of this, is when you kind of go digging on the injuries, a lot of them are like long-term injuries that players have had. So where they've like ACLs to like a broken ankle, fractures. There's like, it's a lot of the same injuries, and you see yourself like, how on earth has like this kind of problem arisen? And like it needs sorted. Like like, because even then the players themselves are like, they're like holding themselves up with, like, it's like getting held up with tape, and you just see yourself like the next World Cup, obviously 2026, like, we can't afford, like, in essence the same mistakes again, really. Like, yes, it's Canada, Mexico, United States, like, in theory that's fine, simply because obviously it shouldn't be hot. Too bad. Like, obviously the factors that you've got to consider are do, like, the like, not necessarily the like the typhoons or the hurricanes, anything like that. I love how I say typhoons. That's more but like the hurricanes is what you've got to factor in. Do they become a factor at any point in, like, United States games, or even just any of them in general, because you don't know how the environment 4 years down the line could be, or 3.5 as it were. But obviously it just, you see yourself, what happens next? Because you're in a hot country, it's still going to be piping hot, it's still going to be like what it would have been in, say, a European or an Asian or like an American or an Americas or like Australian climate, as it were, if it was over the summer. Obviously, if it was Australia, for example, like Australia, New Zealand, you'd be kind of having it this time of the year anyway, because you couldn't have it June, July, because it'd be absolutely freezing, and you'd have to have it in June. You could probably, saying that, you probably could get away with June and July in Australia and New Zealand to an extent. It would maybe be, and it would be interesting, because I think that's what it would be. I think it's the best way to define it, is interesting. Like, would it happen? And that's when people have to remember that, with how, in this case for, like, Qatar is, but we'll see what happens. That, like, I think that's why it's like 2030 or something. It's like potentially, obviously, could be Australia, but could easily be in Europe. But see what happens. Obviously, like, at the moment, I would say the World Cup itself, I'm just not sure. Like, I don't think it. I think it will still be a good tournament. I think there's going to be a lot of issues regardless with it, and I think it stems back to, like, the 4 years ago when we were in Russia for it. Like, it was a great tournament, but it was still a lot of eyes on it for, like, wrong reason, right reasons, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Take it from there, and yeah, I'm not sure what's like, what could happen. Like, for me personally, from a World Cup point of view, like, it could almost be a case of who keeps a fit team, really. And I really mean that, by the way, because you do think, like, who could stay fit? Because, like, Group A should be Netherlands, Senegal, but with Mane now out of the equation, Ecuador will seriously think that they have a chance of getting through if there's no Mane. If Mane can be fit for the World Cup, like, the way to look at it, Senegal-Netherlands game is maybe the game that you would write him out for anyway. The game that you would hope Mane's fit for is Ecuador on the 29th of November. That is the game you're hoping that Ecuador-Senegal, if Mane's fit, can he play in 3 weeks' time? That is what it comes down to. You'd honestly be saying, so can we try everything to make it happen? Because you would hope, in theory, that Ecuador get a result against Qatar. Netherlands, Senegal is either a draw or a win for Netherlands. Senegal should get past Qatar, then Netherlands should get past Ecuador. Therefore, potentially when it comes to match day 3, it's like all to play for between Ecuador, Senegal, Netherlands should be 6 out of 6, and like squad players get a chance to play against Qatar, that way enabling the strongest team for the last 16. Group B should be England. Second is certainly up for debate. Like Wales, this is like their last like potential big tournament for like Bale, Ramsey, Joe Allen, Hennessy, a lot of the old guard as it were, and I think that's what's going to motivate them. I think Bale will be up, like they'll be up for it. I think like it's an open group. If Azamoun's fit for Iran, he can be the difference maker. Like the thing with Iran's squad, and this is when like people forget like to do not necessarily just do their homework, but you kind of like forget to kind of recognise like the squad itself has a lot of players that don't just play in Iran. They've got a lot of players that play in Europe nowadays. Like when you've got players that play in like the Premier League and Godos, yes, he doesn't play too much, but he's part of the squad. Jahan Bakash, who used to play for Brighton now, back in the Eredivisie with Feyenoord, he's obviously had experience with AZ as well. Ali Gozdia for Charleroi, you've got Azamoun obviously for Leverkusen, Ansah Farad, veteran forward for them who now plays for Ammonia, Ali Alpour who plays in Portugal for Gil Vicente, you've got Taremi for Porto who's a prolific scorer for club and country, so it's not like there's like shortage of like options for them. It's just obviously having the players compete, as it were, in essence, up against the likes of like the United States, Wales, and England, because sometimes there is still a bit of a gap in depth, but see what happens. Obviously, if you're able to play most of your European-based players, it sometimes helps first. If you've got like your strongest team out there, it does make a difference. But I think England and Wales is the top two. United States should run close. I think a lot of it for them is really up to kind of. I think with Berhartel, even get it right there, Graham. It's just getting like who does he kind of include really? Like if he does go like where we kind of expect for like a starting 11, because the squad will be like, the squad is so vast, but when you look at like the star men like Reina, Pulisic, Brendan Aronson, who's really come of like light the last couple of years, Josh Sargent's respectable, Zardes brings experience, obviously you've then got the likes of Yunus Musa for Valencia, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, obviously like Letgate, obviously from an MLS point of view, but then you've got the kind of like the younger guard of talent that were signed by like big teams and not quite delivered yet, as it were, like Ricardo Pepe, Gianluca Busio, Brian Reynolds, Kevin Paredes. So it's like, say to yourself, you've got to factor those kind of like players in, like Chris Richards, Anthony Robinson, like these guys are like Carter Rickers, Reggie Cannon. There's honestly, when you look at the squad, there's like depth in the squad of like the US team. You say to yourself, but where does it really click? Like goalie wise, it's like Turner, Johnson, Horvath, and Steffen. So you've got 4 goalies that are consistent, but it's like which 4 become 3, and then which 3 becomes the number 1. So yeah, you've got so much to like factor in with like that US team. So yeah, certainly an interesting one to debate. Like Group C, I would say Argentina should win the group comfortably. Second is up for debate between Mexico and Poland. I feel personally, Mexico just seem to be a very good tournament side. They seem to have always like a good fight about them to say, to make like the last 16 of like the World Cup, and they're very competitive. Like the squad has like good depth, and they always make the joke, oh, Ochoa, he always comes out of like not like necessarily like the woodwork, but it's like, oh, he suddenly has like his one tournament a season where it like one like every World Cup, oh, Ochoa delivers. It's like the guy who comes out of like nowhere, and it's like, who is this guy? Why is he not at like Real Madrid or whatever? But it's like you forget that he's had a good career playing in Spain, and like you forget, and even in Mexico. But you folk forget that right off the bat. So it's like hold the boat. But like they've still got experience within the squad regardless. Like Andres Guardado, Hector Herrera, Edson Alvarez, Pineda, Eric Gutierrez. So you've got players that have got like a lot of European experience, especially, but also obviously in Hector Herrera's case now back in the MLS. Obviously from a forward perspective, like if Raul Jimenez and Corona were both fit, you'd be like, that's a good like two parts of the front three. You then throw in Hirving Lozano from Napoli. You then say, well, that's a good front three: Jimenez, Corona, Lozano, good bit of pace. And you've then got like the likes of Henry Martin, Alexis Vega, Rogelio Funes Mori. Obviously, his brother plays for Argentina, but Rogelio represents the Mexican national team. Like fair play, he's got 15 caps at this point, and also Santiago Jimenez, who plays for Feyenoord. But like there's like no shortage of like fighting them. Like that's what I like about like the Mexican squad. There's like, and I think what the problem is as well, when you kind of dig down with the Mexican squad, is goalie wise the main three have been in the squad for like forever: Ochoa, Talavera and Cota. Ochoa's obviously one of the most like decorated players. Guardado, 177 caps. I wonder how close to 200 he'll get before he retires. Like fair play to him. Still going strong for the country. But yeah, I think Argentina, Poland, if Lewandowski's firing, this like Poland need to deliver, I think, under like not just Lewandowski but Zielinski. That's kind of like the main like 2 points as it were, like Lewandowski and like Zielinski. But you've still then got to factor in like Kaczarwick if he's maybe be part of like the squad. Like Grosicki brings experience, but where he's going to be actually part of the squad, part of the team's a different matter. You've got Chesney from a goalkeeping point of view. Defensively is always going to be an interesting one, because in theory you think, who do they make as their back four? Do they make it Matty Cash? Do they make it Gumney? Do they make it Kamil Glick? Do they make it Bezerinsky, Bednarak, Jerdziak, Kedzior? Does Frankowski suddenly get put left wing back? All these kind of things. Like there's so many elements to the Poland squad. Like when they eventually like there's so many wheels to the team that you say to yourself, who do they end up picking to like lead the line? Like lead the line is going to be most likely like Lewandowski, Milik, Piatek. That'll probably be the main three they rely on. Sawerski will probably get time in it as well. But yeah, there's definitely, there's like, it's a squad that brings more questions than answers, if I'm honest, and that's what I think will be interesting. Like Buxa could get a shout. Like he deserves a shout because he stepped in for Lens and the national team and made himself known. But we'll see how Group C pans out. Group D fairly even as well. France should win the group. Not necessarily comfortably, but should win. Australia, Denmark, Tunisia. Now, Australia, I think from a Scotland perspective, they'll be kind of rooting for because there's 7 players at the moment in the squad in the league. So, like Martin Boyle, Aaron Mooy and that. So, you'll see what happens. Personally, I would say Denmark-Tunisia game could determine Australia's fate. And what I mean by that is if Denmark-Tunisia is a draw, I think Australia will then feel like they have a chance, because if they get a result against Tunisia match day 2, they know come match day 3 it's all to play for if they can beat Denmark, because it could potentially be a group where you could be looking at 3 points taking second spot, or you could be looking at 4. So, and it could come like goal difference being the factor with that. Group E, Spain, Germany should be top 2. Costa Rica, Japan sadly just will not be there to contend. Like, saying that, if whoever gets the win between Costa Rica and Spain may feel they have a chance to get at least a result against Spain or Germany. You've got to remember that in match day 1, like Germany play Japan, Spain play Costa Rica. If Costa Rica have like the full strength team like Brian Ruiz, Keylor Navas, like I know that's only 2 names, but like Brian Ruiz will want to end on a high for it being his last World Cup, and I think so will Keylor Navas potentially, unless they make like the last one, like the next one as it were. Like Celso Borges brings experience as well, all 154 caps to him. Used to love him back in like when he used to play in Europe. He was never like the flashiest midfielder in the world, but just went about his business. Joel Campbell as well. Then obviously defensively is where they're going to probably try to look to strive on. Like Matarrita, Kendall Waston, Calvo, Oscar Duarte, Brian Oviedo. They're the ones that they're going to be like, right guys, we need you to kind of hold up tight here. Like, use it where we have experience in big depth as well. That's what's going to make the difference. Like, yes, they've got like Gamboa as well, but there is like, I think as far as I believe he's going to be injured. But if like, we'll see how it plays out really, because I think if Gamboa wasn't injured, I think you could have then like the back 4 would have been quite resolute. Gamboa's had good international experience in the past with Costa Rica, and it got him to the dance with like West Brom and Celtic, where it forced those deals to happen, but obviously didn't prove to be as successful as hoped. Obviously Brian Ruiz, yes, he's the captain, yes, he's had an established career. It becomes a question of can him and the team deliver, but we'll see how it goes at the end of the day. Like Japan, like their biggest talking point, no Kyogo, no Rio Hatate. That was the interesting one. I was like, I wasn't expecting this, but like Kawashima, he doesn't even play. He doesn't play club games yet. He's in the squad. You see, so how's he in? Like, but he seems to always still get play for the national team. Like regardless, you see it Gonda. Like, you feel sorry for the guy, but like Junior Ito, Kubo, Ritsu Dan, Shibasika, Endo, like the midfield. Like, I think that's maybe part of the reason why Hatate hasn't featured, is because like Endo, Shibasaki, Doan, Matoma, Minamino, Kubo, Marita, Junior Ito and Kamada, that is near enough going to be like the midfield, or kind of like the attackers, because you've got to remember as well, Junior Ito can play right wing, Kamada can play centre forward, like Matoma, Minamino can play left wing, right wing. Like that midfield, I think that's why they've only sent like 4 forwards, because when you break it down, the midfield of Japan is near enough forwards anyway. Like, even though a lot of them domestically play midfield anyway, like Endo, Shibasika, but Kubo, Minamino, Matoma, Marita, Ito and Kamada, they can all play like attacking mids, false nines, wingers, and that's how like Maida and Asamo are most likely going to be. Like one of them will be like what will happen is it'll be like a 4-5-1. I get that feeling. So they'll have like the 2 defensive mids, and they'll get the 3 mids for there kind of thrown in to kind of like juice it up from there. But see how it goes. But yeah, that's Group E. Group F becomes interesting if players are fit for squads, because in theory, my feeling is Belgium and Croatia will qualify. But if Belgium have the injury problems that could happen, and same for Croatia, Canada and Morocco certainly have the squad and the confidence, especially in Canada's case, to say, well, we can challenge for second. Canada Morocco, if that was match day 1's game, I would have said would have certainly made it interesting from off the bat. But like a lot of the groups, that's like a group, like a match day 3 game where it will determine who could qualify depending how Belgium Croatia do, because Belgium and Croatia potentially come match day 3 could be, they might, whoever needs to win, or both might just need to draw. If both draw, then it helps them, but see how that plays out. Group G, Brazil should qualify. Second is certainly up for debate between Serbia, Switzerland, Cameroon. My feeling would say Swiss, just maybe, even though it's seen as Serbia's golden generation. Milinkovic, Savic, Vlahovic, Kostic will all certainly be up for it. I just feel Switzerland have just that better tournament experience, especially this squad anyways, and that's what I think will just edge them. And in Group H, I think Portugal will top the group. Uruguay should finish second. South Korea, if Heung-min Son is fit, will certainly want to say otherwise. It'll be interesting to see how the likes of Godin, Cáceres do, because obviously these guys, like in Godin's case, is kind of like disappeared, like disappeared almost off the face of the earth, as it were. Because obviously he went from Atletico, then he went to Inter, and then he went from Inter to Calgary, and then now he's in Argentina. You'd almost say yourself, like, the guy still probably could have been good enough to have stayed at Atletico. Like, goalie wise for Uruguay will most likely be Muslera starting, probably be his last World Cup, potentially, but also like 36 goalies might still want to keep going at 40. Also, Uruguay might not necessarily qualify for the next World Cup. But the squad itself, like, you've got, like, if Araujo's fit, then could be a part. But like Jimenez, Cortez, Matthias Vinna, which is, he obviously has an established amount of cap for obviously Uruguay. But like Godin, Cáceres, Jimenez, Cortez and Vinna could likely be like the main back line. Matias Oliveira's obviously been a big part of Napoli's season, so he's definitely got a shout for getting a starting spot. Midfield is what is very impressive of the like Uruguay squad still to this day. Like even like past World Cups, that's what stood out for Uruguay, was like their midfield with the depth that they had. Like, and even still, Vecino, yes, he's flattered to deceive at times, but Bentancur's consistent. Valverde is seen as one of the foreign players in the world. Obviously, if you keep up with like other leagues, De La Cruz, and obviously Argentina's been class this season. Possible shout of him coming to Europe. Aaron Barry's just consistent in Spain. Obviously, had half 8 times flattered to deceive the last couple of seasons, but especially after a good wee spell a couple of years prior. And then obviously Torreira just goes about his business for club and country, even though at times he has cold spells and hot spells like any player. Then obviously from a forward line, it's all about Cavani and Suarez. Both experienced hands, have both had exceptional careers, won ample trophies. And then like the forwards coming through is a bit to be desired. Like Jonathan Rodriguez hasn't done as much as expected. Same for like Maxi Gomez, Darwin Núñez, and then there's obviously the likes of like Diego Rossi, who's been in the MLS now in Turkey, Palestri obviously at Man United. So there's like, I don't see Palestri being part of the squad, but like the five, I would imagine like Uruguay will take will probably be like say Suarez, Cavani, Jonathan Rodriguez, maybe Maxi Gomez and Darwin Núñez, but we'll see how it goes. Like Stuani as well potentially could get in, but it depends if the who's fit, who's not, and all that kind of stuff. But see how it goes. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day for like Uruguay. But see how it goes. From there, like last 16, like for me, I feel a European nation will win it personally. Who I don't know wholeheartedly, because Netherlands and Germany is kind of, I'm intrigued to see how they both do. Along with Belgium, like Belgium, could they kind of all click into place this tournament? Same for Portugal. Like Portugal, like the one that brings all the debate is like Portugal, Argentina. Like these guys, like Messi, Ronaldo, but then you've got like every nation, like all the big nations that have like a star name are all like, this is potentially their last World Cup unless they all play beyond 40. So like Portugal losing out on the likes of potentially Pepe and Ronaldo, and you just say to yourself, like, yes, they've won a Euros, but they'd love to win a World Cup. Like, this is like their chance, like, to say, let's make history. Come on. Like, Ronaldo will be up for it. Like, and he's got a chance to like 200 caps as well, which is kind of like scary. Like Pepe, João Moutinho, these guys, Jose Font, they've seen it all, done it all, and I'm sure they will. Like, if Portugal click as well as they can, as much as Fernando Santos helped bring, as I said, the Euros to them, it's like, can they bring home like the World Cup? If they can bring a World Cup home, then we'll see what happens. That's what it's going to come down to. If they can make it happen, if they get past the group stage, then I personally feel they'll make the quarters, but it becomes interesting from there, because if they can make the quarters to Brazil, then it gets interesting, because I don't think they would want Brazil in the last 16. They'd want to keep away from them as much as possible. But see what happens. Like, could be, I think there's going to be just interesting regardless, but see how that plays out, I say, between now and obviously when that arises. Obviously for like domestic stuff in general, still kind of give a bit of love and attention for that. Like, it's just like the Bundesliga is obviously still proving interesting. Obviously Union Berlin's hit a sticky wicket. Dortmund looked like they were finding some form again after 3 impressive wins on the trot, and then they came unstuck against Wolfsburg. But Bayern showing why you've got to be consistent. This is why you have to be consistent, because the likes of Union Berlin getting found out against Bayer Leverkusen, Freiburg obviously a few weeks ago, or near enough a month ago, took Freiburg to the cleaners. Bayern took Freiburg to the cleaners 5-0. Yes, Freiburg have rebounded back since, and they've got a game in hand on Bayern being against Leipzig. And yes, if they win the game, they're only a point behind still. But it's little things like that is why it's what separates these kind of teams from, like, whether it be Dortmund, whether it be Freiburg, whether it be Union Berlin, to like why they'll, like, people sometimes say this is why you'll never challenge for the title, because, or like Europe or whatever, because you've got to be consistent. Like in Hamburg's case for the second division, they lost convincingly to St. Pauli, and then Magdeburg, which was seen as a bit of a shock result as well. But they've got Greer Firth, who aren't really doing great at all since being relegated. Same with Arminia Bielefeld. But Hamburg, I think there's been the assumption this season finally be the season that they get up. Hard to say. Obviously Serie A has been like yo-yoing quite comprehensively, especially since Napoli have ran away with it at the moment with an 8-point gap on AC Milan, while Lazio, Atalanta, Juve, Roma all have a game on hand that would bring them a little bit closer. Udinese fell away, like no one in their last like 5 or 6, like 4 draws, 1 loss kind of says it all, especially since that could have kept them kind of in the mix a little bit. But it is worth noting that the games were against Lazio, Torino maybe a bit of a disappointment, Cremonese was the one that should have got a result, then Lecce, and then Spezia. So it's like, it just shows they do well against the top teams, like they've matched them pillar for post, got results against them, but then you put them against the little teams as it were in the league and they can't get a result, and you say to yourself, and why is that? And especially when you break it down, like Torino probably at least a point drop, maybe 3, 2 against Cremonese, 2 against Lecce, and 2 against Spezia. So right away, that's like 9 points dropped. So they could have only been 5 points behind Napoli, been like the shock team to keep up with them. Like Salernitana also being a surprise team this season, sitting in 9th. Like fair play to them this season. But Napoli at the moment, 14 games played, 12 wins, 2 draws. Like their only game that they've lost like this season is the game against Liverpool, so it kind of shows how that played out. Scottish Premiership, that just gets more interesting by the game. Rangers falling away, obviously drew a few weeks ago against Livy, and then lost to St Johnstone at the weekend. But Celtic just keep getting results. Aberdeen mixing losses with wins. Livingston the same, Hearts the same. Hibs like 1 win in 6, and the games that they've lost, the Celtic 6-1, the Aberdeen 4-1 are the games that have really rattled the Hibs fans especially. But the games that have really annoyed like myself personally were the Dundee United game. Like losing that one was just, we shouldn't be losing that. We lost to St Johnstone at home, which we shouldn't lose, and then obviously we've lost like to Ross County. The one that we lost to Aberdeen, the 4-1 game, that only became a farce really, because obviously how the penalty situation went, game kind of just fell apart in the second half, and I almost like, and it goes back to like my argument with any team, regardless if it's Hibs, Mallorca, Dortmund, Rangers, Man United, whatever, how that first half ended. If you can't be motivated for that second half to say, right, we've just lost a goal in the most stupidest and potentially controversial of circumstances, go out there, make an example in the second half and say, right, yes, we lost that first half 1-0, let's go out there and make an example at the team in the second half. And especially as a lot of Hibs fans going into that game said, especially since we got a result against Aberdeen and how Porteous Goodwin was the big talking point, Hibs should have used that as fuel to say, right, let's make another example of Aberdeen. Like, if you can, and it goes by the argument again, if you can't do it, then why play for a team? Like, if you can't do it once, you should be doing it every week. Spain, certainly, be interesting, as it were. Like, I would say, like, the interesting game of the week, really, I feel, like, of the midweek fixtures, really was Mallorca Atletico Madrid, simply because Atletico seem to be having problems. And Mallorca took advantage of this last season, and could they do so again? If they were to get a win here, they would go into the World Cup break in the top half of the table. They would be 19 points. They're unbeaten in 3, 2 wins, 1 draw. And the 2 wins, Valencia and Villarreal. The Villarreal game, they sucked up a lot of pressure, just held their own, and took advantage when they got the chances presented to them. Like the Sociedad game, was just unlucky. Sevilla, another one unlucky. When they played Espanyol as well a few weeks ago, and Elche, the games were, less said about them the better. Like Espanyol, like that felt like a missed opportunity, and I said the Elche game, that should never have been played a few weeks ago. But in Mallorca's case, if they can get a result tonight against Atletico, who obviously have looked woeful in Europe, they looked woeful against Cadiz, and against Espanyol, questions were being asked again. Yeah, there's definitely some people, especially since Atletico need to sell players to balance the books, it brings up that debate of what's going to happen. Like at the moment, it's just a 2-horse race for the title. It's then open to debate really who can get a European spot, because Bilbao, Atletico, Betis, Osasuna, Real Sociedad, Vallecano, at the moment would all feel the most confident, but Villarreal, Valladolid, Valencia, Mallorca, Girona will all feel like they have a chance. Sevilla, they have got a lot of work to do to even consider a European spot, but at the moment, looking at the league, Elche looked down, fought that last season with Levante. They fought hard to try and get themselves back up, but Elche at the moment look like the team most likely going down. So you've then got 2 spots to fill with potentially, say, 7 or 8 teams. So Cadiz, Celta, Sevilla's going to be in conversation at the moment, I'm afraid, which I would never have thought, but that's what happens. Espanyol, Almera, Getafe, Girona, Mallorca. You pretty much near enough see the bottom half of the table, all at the moment, are definitely up for debate for a relegation spot, simply because of, we know how quick it can swing. If a team goes on a run of form, like Getafe for example, yes, they've only won 1 game in 5, but they're getting draws thrown in there. If they're at least getting points, whereas other teams aren't, around them, it makes all the difference. Because especially if you can slot in like a win against a team that's down there, but they're drawing here and there, it makes all the difference. And just, it's a lot of things like that is what separates staying up to going down. Like Sevilla Sociedad will be an interesting game, since Sociedad no win in 3, they've kind of fallen away as well, slightly, and it just makes interesting. Like Bilbao, like they've had 2 losses out of their last 5 games, and like Girona was the one I wasn't expecting them to lose, especially since I thought, well, it looks like they've built a resolute team. They're firing on all cylinders, but it proved not to be. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all kind of pans out really for these kind of like this game week, as it were, who kind of stands out, who doesn't, and obviously come the winter break, like the World Cup break, like who's kind of like fit post the World Cup break to say, right, let's get back into it and try and finish like that second half of the season with a flurry. But see how it goes, folks. Let me know how your team's doing and how your nation's all maybe set up for the World Cup. So have a good one, folks. Take it easy all, and I will catch you all later.